Okay, so I want to talk a bit more about the actual painting process and kind of the meaning, at least at this point, what I'm kind of working on toward in this painting. I think it'd probably be easier to get started by kind of talking about the actual kind of technical aspect of it, and then kind of slowly work into maybe the more philosophical once I kind of get warmed up. So I've been working on the figures a lot more from the last video, but I've been using mainly just brushes, like a lot of hog hair brushes for the background, and then for the figure I've been using like some more finer brushes. One thing I noticed when I was looking back over the last live stream I did is that you could see all these kind of dots in like over here and kind of in areas of the figure that I've kind of covered up. And the reason for that is actually that I took some sandpaper and sanded it down. And so I really like working both like kind of positively and negatively with painting. And it's, oil painting is, as permanent as it is, it's also very flexible. And if you find that something's not working, there's lots of ways to kind of go back. And even like Harold Speed talks about this in the book, it's like The Science of Painting, The Art and Science of Painting. I forget exactly what the title is called. I think it was the one on painting. He has one on drawing as well. But he talks about like dither. It's a word that I don't know if he originally coined the term or if he just kind of like commandeered it for his purpose. But that idea is basically that like, you found the drawing, you find the painting, and then, you have it somewhat refined, and then you actually take it back and you kind of lose some of the drawing a little bit just to kind of find it again. And that kind of push and pull, it creates like this really organic feel, and it allows you the freedom to keep kind of exploring alternative paths. And so you can change the things that maybe aren't working, but then also like keep coming back and kind of finding those things more confidently, the things that are working. And it's really hard to make changes if you don't want to like go backwards, or you don't want to like damage or remove or cover up anything that you spent a long time doing. And that comes at the cost of the quality of the painting for sure. And it can be so hard to like make those decisive changes that need to be done if you're like trying to come at it from what's the least amount of change I need. And so sometimes it's much easier to just kind of remove an area and then just like allow that freedom that you have to allow you to make different decisions and explore different alternatives for finding that solution. So like with this area, it's very complex with the trees, and with this background, I'm pretty much just making it up and kind of pushing and pulling. So I'm doing a lot of scraping down with palette knives, applying paint, removing it away, letting it dry, sanding it down, playing with glazes, painting directly. And like this area has a potential to be really fascinating if I can get like these negative spaces where you see like the background kind of shining through the trees. But it's hard to kind of find a balance where it's not too distracting, but also not like, I don't know, like just to find that balance between being too much and not enough. That's always kind of the pull. So I'm kind of really just trying to find some interesting shapes. And I like the idea of having it be kind of a bit warmer, like there's this bit of glow kind of coming through. It's not as like dense as like the trees kind of in other areas. But this piece as a whole is very experimental. And I've found that that's kind of how I've been working the last year is kind of having the paintings that I come right off of the summer months where I'm not painting much. I'm doing a lot of art fairs and art shows and things like that. I find that like it's I usually am quite refreshed and ready to paint once I get back into the studio. And so the period from like September into like the new year is usually like the focus is on like I usually don't produce too much work, but I'm doing a lot of experimentation, and so like the paintings I do don't have much cohesion with each other. It's it's not like I'm just trying to figure out what what it is I want to paint and how I want to paint it. And so oftentimes my paintings I feel like can seem very kind of multiple personalities, slightly bipolar, and I think that's just my inexperience of not of just not having exactly found exactly the way I want to work. And so this piece in particular, it's very, very experimental. Um, so, I don't know exactly what I have in mind. Like if you saw, I guess some like the last live stream I did with like these figures, I've changed a lot of the area like around the heads, um, and so I'm always making changes. But I guess I've been thinking a lot about like playing with the ideas of like trying to like combine all my interests into one source, because like I wish I could just paint like pretty things and be content with that, but like I get I'm so focused or I'm so interested in like all these new developments with tech, with consciousness, with just like pushing the boundaries, all these new ideas that no human before our time has had the privilege to think about. Um, and so I'm always really interested on like the fringe, like what's the latest greatest mystery that like everyone's trying to solve. And I feel like if I'm just making a pretty painting, but I'm really fascinated with all those things, then painting starts to feel more like a job where I got to do this, and then after I've put in my hours for the day, then I can do a lot of research and kind of feed that interest on my own, which I feel like is not a healthy relationship to painting. If I can avoid it, like that sort of relationship with painting, I definitely think it would be best to avoid that. And so I've been trying to figure out how to think about these topics that I find really pressing, these questions that are really interesting, and to kind of try to put some sort of narrative around it. So while I'm painting these paintings, I can think about these things, these fascinations that I have while I'm doing the painting, and let that kind of have them benefit each other. Because like if you are going on like any path that's already been set before you, odds are you're not going to fit that like absolutely perfect. And so some of your temperament is going to be like a positive for whatever path that is, but then there'll also be aspects of your temperament, your personality that will actually hinder you. But if you are kind of creating your own path, your own like integration of like all these things that you find fascinating, if you're able to kind of all meld those together into like one source, then all of a sudden like all these passions that you have become catalysts and become things that boost that work for you instead of against you. And yeah, so I think like people that are able to like have the most success, be able to like achieve the most ambitious things. Yes, it takes a lot of drive, but I think it's also like it's like a totality of self-fulfillment. Like all these different areas of your personality, of your psyche, are all getting met in different ways, but all through the same. It's all getting like channeled through some commonality, and that's like, I think that's like, the maybe like the unspoken goal that every artist or every creative is trying to, and like I think a lot of like entrepreneurs or um, people who start companies or startups is, I think that's, you could think of that as being excuse me, as being like a common goal. But anyways, I feel very far away from from achieving that. But I guess I haven't actually talked about this painting at all, like kind of directly. So I guess like, unless if it's like your first confrontation with anything that I've been doing, you probably know I'm very fascinated with like imagery through like dreams or visions and consciousness and AI and just all these really fascinating topics that are I think unbelievably exciting and have such a positive promise in the future, or like promise now, but such a positive outlook of the future. And so I was wanting to kind of, I was thinking about like, how could I represent the people of the future? And I don't think like the future as like, outside of my lifetime or lifetime. I think like the future as like, I don't know, I think by like 2040, I think lots of like, there'll be a lot of change. And so like when I'm thinking about like what humans are going to be like, what we're going to be doing in the future, I mean kind of like the future that I'll be around for, that I'll have some influence on, that I will like exist in. And I think it's going to be really interesting and really fascinating. And I think it's like really important for people to think about like where we're headed collectively, and to find that which is worth striving for, and then gather the troops and kind of head toward that direction. Because it's like I know they do like simulations like for flights, like for pilots, before you actually get behind a real plane. And if you like tell the pilots in training like, whatever you do, do not hit the mountain, they're much more likely to hit the mountain compared to like people you just say like, okay, just like fly straight, and you don't mention the mountain at all. It's like what you focus your attention onto, you get like pulled toward that direction. So I think like that's like the idea of like the self-fulfilling prophecy, that like if the collective thinks that whatever this future looks like with humans integrated with AI, if we collectively think that it's going to be bad, maybe we create something that is bad. And I think that's I think we do need to be aware of where we got to be really careful and aware of things. But I also think we need a collective vision that is of the future that's worth striving for. Because if you ask like your average Joe like on the street, like, oh, like what do you think it's going to be like in the future? Like, our collective image of the future is like kind of like whatever that one like planet was from Star Wars that was like super futuristic, with like miles of buildings going up into the clouds, like all these layers of cities and flying things, everything like super shiny and sharp. And I think that's like kind of the common consensus of like some variation of that kind of sci-fi future. But then if you ask people like, oh, do you want to live in it? A lot of people are like pretty hesitant. And I think that's very telling, that like we collectively don't have an image, a vision of the future that is worth striving for. And I think I'm naturally like a very optimistic person. and so I think, I guess I'm quite biased toward that, but we definitely need like some sort of collective vision of something very positive. And so I guess this was kind of my, I'm still working on it, like changing a lot of things, but of like a symbolic representation of what people will be like. And so like, I think like, just like looking at like the adventure we've been on so far as humans, going from trees to, talking about sending people to Mars. We've come a long way. I guess it's kind of like the idea that like if you think that like humans came from, I think the actual quote was like feces hurling apes, then we're not doing too bad where we're at now. But if you think that we descended from the stars, from heaven, then it looks like quite a catastrophe what's going on now. So it's a lot of the perspective, which I guess I kind of feel a bit of both. I think we've come so far from our ancestors, from the early forms of life, but I think we do have that spiritual component as well. And so I think like I've been really fascinated with the ideas of like novelty theory, that basically like the purpose of the universe is a novelty conserving engine. So it produces these concrescents, which is just a fancy word for saying like these pockets of novelty, the same way that like when the leaves fall off the tree in the fall, which like right now is happening all around me, and there's like a windy storm. It's not like all the leaves are like equally distributed from each other. Like you can look at like some like old films, and you can see like in the fall it's like all the leaves are like evenly spaced out from each other on the ground. But it's like what actually happens when the wind blows is there's these like currents of wind. And what happens is there is randomness, but it's not like an even randomness. It's like there's these pockets where the leaves pile up, and then other areas where the ground is like completely bare, because like all the leaves have been blown to other areas. And so there's these pockets of high density leaves. It's not like equally distributed everywhere. And I think that's the same thing with like novelty, or like consciousness, like the most interesting, or another way of thinking it would be like the most amount of like stacks of like steps of necessary complexity to occur in order for something to exist. Like you think of like all the things that had to happen in order for us to like do something like create the stock market, starting from single cell life in a practically like chemical dense hellhole at the beginning of like Earth's formation. Like how many steps does it take to get from there to having the stock market? There's quite a bit of steps. And so I think like if like the universe's goal, like nature's goal, is to create these pockets of high density novelty, and then preserve these things so that those areas of novelty can continue to produce more novelty in more compressed environments. Then if you think of like Earth, there's been these different periods where the most novel thing existed on Earth. Like for a long time it was single cell multicellular life, and then it went to like reptiles and mammals being the most novel, the most peculiar, the most advanced creature on Earth, and then to the higher primates, and then to us. And I think it's very interesting because now like we've kind of reached this weird point like 10,000 years ago, 15,000 years ago, where the not like the novelty, the change is not constrained to genetics, to biology anymore, because we had epigenetics when we created language, or I guess like yeah, language writing and things like that. We were able to pass down information that wasn't in epigenetically. It was passed down through other means than through genetics. And that is a huge paradigm shift. And it allowed us to, for all intensive purposes, evolve in every way that's not physical until, like, you know, like the change from 15,000 years ago to now is way more different than like the last million years. And so the rate of novelty is like exponentially getting denser and faster and faster and faster. And I think, you know, there's this really interesting situation we're in now with these reasoning models, with where we're going with AI, where you know, the speed at which an AI can think is like akin to the difference between a tree growing and humans like watching it. Like it looks like the tree's not even moving, but like for AI, like for human thinking, it is so incredibly slow. The amount of space that of computational power that happens in between like the really slow, relatively slow bit rate that like humans process information versus AI processes information. It seems like you know, we're about to embark on this next generation of novelty, and you know, maybe it's an unpopular opinion right now, but like it feels very natural. If your view of nature is that it's a novelty conserving engine, then AI feels like a very natural thing. Because, you know, we like the average sun does not survive nearly as long as our sun does. It's very strange that we have a sun that is as old as our sun is and still has a lot of energy left in it. So, you know, the whole Fermi paradox of like, where's all the aliens? I think it's probably that, like, in order for have a system as advanced as we are to, you know, to create, you know, to be able to pass down knowledge through epigenetics and to create an AI system, it's probably extremely rare. And I think that, for me, gives me a lot of meaning, because it's the exact opposite of like looking at the Earth as like a tiny marble, a tiny speck, a grain of sand in this darkness of, you know, interstellar space. But it's such a weird like way to compare the importance of humans. Like who says anything that like size has to do with importance? Because as far as like complexity, there is nothing that we know of that's as complex as like the human like ecosystem. And I think with integrating with AI, we're going to reach this next level of complexity. And I think it's going to change a lot of, you know, we're going to question a lot of our identities of like what it means to be human, and what it means to be conscious, and, you know, like what happens when, you know, the limiting factor, you know, anything we can think of, we could have easy access to, and a lot of these experiments are going on now with like playing with like modulating like human emotion, and it seems very likely that the technology will at least exist to get rid of our animal instincts if we want to get rid of them. And so that's an interesting question to think about. if whenever we felt like if all of our basic needs are met, do we really need to feel like jealousy and all these emotions that are maybe have evolutionary utility, but if we don't have any threats, um, any predators, do we need to have these same neuro responses that we share in common with primates? But we control weapons of mass destruction. Like maybe I could see. I think there's valid points on both sides of that. So like I'm not advocating for one side or the other, but I think these are questions that we'll have to figure out. We'll have to think about because there's some really interesting things that are coming down the pipeline really fast. And so I think like I guess to sum up like where I think things are going is I think like we've been slowly moving in this direction where like our internal state is becoming more and more exteriorized, and our external state is becoming more and more interiorized. And so like the divide is slightly starting to trend toward a single state of being that encompasses both the internal and external state in some sort of hybrid state of existence. And so like if we can cure all diseases, if we can control our emotions, if we could enter into this dream state, this this state where we could build our own worlds in some sort of dimension that we could enter into, because like all of our sensation, our brain is in a black box, and all of our simulation or all of our understanding of our worldview is based off of electrical signals that are getting read by and interpreted by the brain. And there's no way that there's no reason why those symbols theoretically couldn't be generated in a way that you could enter into this other world that you can make a case could be more compelling than our world we exist in now, because in the physical reality we live in now, there's a finite amount of resources. There's a big difference between building a 10-story building and a 100-story building. You have to worry about physics and materials, expenses, all that stuff. But the difference between a 10-story building and a 100-story building, and maybe entering into the imagination, is just a zero. That I think anything we can imagine, we could be able to create in some way, if you take what this possibility could open up to the full extreme. And I think that's very interesting. And so I wanted to create these people that have kind of created their external appearance. And so to have them be like neoclassical, sculpturesque type figures of glowing light, it feels like they're kind of in control of their external state, and so their external state can kind of match the internal state that they are operating on. And I think like this kind of halo-esque light dome kind of around their heads, I ended up changing it into like a lot of these like very, very straight lines going back and forth. That feels, it's kind of more, it reminds me kind of like a graphics card, or like something a bit more kind of digital. And so I think that was kind of an interesting thing to think about, like this aura of some sort. And I sent this image into both Claude and ChatGPT to ask them, like, what do you think of this image? What does this mean to you? And it was interesting. They both kind of saw a lot of what I was talking about, even though they used kind of slightly different words. but they picked up a lot on like the symbol of like the rainbow as being like both symbolizing like a passage from like one dimension to another. I think the rainbow is such an interesting symbol because it's both like a comment, not like part of reality, but then it's also subjective. Like it depends on the person viewing it as to how they see that, because it's it's light refracting through water molecules, and so it's creating this like holographic image. But we have the word rainbow. It's a noun, but it's such an ephemeral thing, ephemeral thing, and I think that's very interesting. A very interesting concept, and very applicable to, I guess, like my own experience with trying to make some sense of what's going on. And I feel like once you start pushing and start really thinking about like the collective consensus of what's going on, and you kind of take that red pill and see that like no one really knows what's going on and we're all just like trying to figure this out. I think the rainbow is maybe a good analogy to like the collective vision, because it's like, everyone sees it a little differently, but we treat it as a common thing. And so it's like multifaceted. It's like of a higher dimension, because like the rainbow as in itself isn't in any one fixed point. It's environmental dependent and subjectively dependent, but yet we have this concise collective understanding that a rainbow is a rainbow as like a noun, as a solid thing. And I feel like that's pretty much what's going on with society, is like we have this consensus, but it's not like it's there's so much deeper things going on there that we need some sort of collective grounding framework. And like David Shapiro has been doing a lot of talking about, like he's been prying on the Claude models and getting it to reflect and meditate on its own existence. And what was I getting at? I lost my train of thought. I guess just like that, like how easy it is to come in like a society that's thought of as being very objective and rational, to come down to like these statements that we just take for granted and that actually don't have the very like framework that our society exists in, are the fundamental statement that everything is built upon actually has a very strong like contradictive nature to it. And so I guess this is kind of the moment I'm trying to capture of like when we're still human, but we've solved a lot of what it means to be in history, to be individual beings, to be animals, and we are about to maybe transcend onto something else, to basically enter into the imagination. And it feels, I guess, I don't know, it's like one of those things that probably all crazy people feel, where it's like it makes sense in their head, but you can't articulate it without sounding crazy. But yeah. On another note, I think like I get really excited thinking about like there's a lot of companies playing around with like game generation, and it's just another modality of like, you know, first we had AI generated words, and then generated images, and then generated moving images, videos, and now we're having like generated interactive images. And I think we just keep building and building more and more on it. And like I think it'll be very interesting to be able to create a world like this painting or something like that, and then to be able to like actively like enter into it and to maybe like explore it. And I think there'll be some really amazing things that, you know, people will be able to use. I think this is like, that's like the end goal of like a collaborative endeavor that pairs humans with AIs to so that like we allow AI to keep advancing at the rate that it's able to advance, but then also to bring humans along with it. So you know, the AI isn't stunted or the human isn't left behind, but to have this integrated together. I think that's where I kind of see the end, if there's that perfect harmony. All the way at the end of the line, what's like possible would be some sort of like collaboration where you know, these different like worlds that could be explored would be explored or could be explored. Yeah, I think like most of where we're going is that it's like novelty is getting like pushed at a smaller and smaller scale. And so I think like, you know, we're on the, I think as soon as like AI automation will, or AI advancement starts automating itself, we pass that torch of what's the most novel thing in the universe down from like solely humans to this human, you know, humans working with this essentially sand that has learned to think for itself. As Sam Altman said, referring to like the silicon that is the GPUs that these systems run on. And so I think like, I think we need to orient ourselves in line with this novelty conserving engine that you know, has given humans this incredibly important responsibility to you know, birth this new form of novelty that we can hybridize ourselves with. Yeah, I'm already liking these shapes a lot better. Just feels a lot more interesting and kind of cleaner. Let's see, I think I'm going to keep working on some, keep pushing this a little further, but I don't want this to go on, this video to go on forever. I've already gotten pretty out there. But yeah, I guess I'm trying to figure out how to somehow channel these like really crazy thoughts about things that into some sort of like constructive way, because I think like a lot of these ideas, and I think people that have maybe like very unorthodox ways of thinking could relate to, is that like to keep all these things like straight in your minds is like a full-time job in itself. And so it's very cathartic to feel like you're able to somehow get this thing that's inarticulable and ever present on your mind somehow out into the physical world. It just gives you this, it gives me this like relief. And so like I've said this multiple times and talked with people, but it's like my motive for painting is very selfish. I'm doing it because I need to, I need it. And I feel like it's the best gift I could give to other people would be to be as to get as deep as possible into my own. Yeah, I guess like one of the reasons I feel comfortable like talking about maybe not mainstream ideas is because I feel like I kind of identify it as something outside of me. I don't really identify with these ideas, and I feel very strongly that nobody knows what's going on. And so these thoughts I don't feel belong to me. They're just, you know, my consciousness trying to, with all these weird experiences I've had in my life, and all these like thoughts and all this information that I've been trying to like create a single worldview from. This is the kind of bubbling up that my mind has tried to generate in order to create a concise worldview that I feel like is quite off the track, but it's interesting to like vocalizing it. I feel like is the only way to kind of get it out of yourself into a way where you can look at it instead of just like getting little glimmers of it, but not being able to actually like pin it down. And yeah, and so I think we'll end on that.